Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking about a sport which is very close to my heart, which doesn't necessarily get the same level of coverage as, say, football or soccer, as it's called in the States, or combat sports or anything of that nature, and that is golf. Now, I'm a big fan of golf. I used to go for several rounds a week. Sometimes if I had a bit of free time, I would just take my clubs and go down to the local driving range. It was always a laugh. Great for your mental health. And hitting a few balls either on the range or doing a couple of rounds a week. I used to absolutely love it. And golf is going through a bit of a difficult time at the moment. And I've got some major worries that it could rip the game in two. Now, for anyone who's not particularly up to speed on golf, golfers are usually members of different tours. So the biggest and most established tour is the PGA Tour, which is in North America. It's where 3 of the 4 majors are held every year. Obviously, Augusta, probably the most famous course out there, certainly in America. And most of the major names of golf down the years have been major stars of the PGA Tour, like Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer, Ben Hogan, Gary Player, Tiger Woods, Rory Mcilroy now. These are the big names. They all go and clamour for the PGA Tour, the big bucks, the big prizes, the big tournaments. But then if you're a European golfer, you've also got the European Tour, which I think it used to be called the Race to Dubai, which was the end of season tournament. And again, the likes of Rory McIlroy or Graham McDowell, or a few years ago you had Lee Westwood, Colin Montgomery. The Europeans would typically base themselves, say, in Europe, or at least come over and play a little bit of time, and they'd be members of the respective tours. I think there's also a Middle Eastern tour called the MENA, the MENA Tour. So again, it's all regionalised, and golfers can be parts of different tours, can compete in different tournaments, and then of course they compete for the big prizes like the Open over in the UK, or like the Augusta National, and for years that's been the format. The history, the prestige has typically been in Europe, and then the razzmatazz and the big bucks has typically been in America. There's no system is perfect in any sport, and there has been dissatisfaction with golf as a spectacle. I think some of the prize fund split and some other bits and pieces for a few years. And 2019, 2020, there was some serious talk, some serious threats of potential breakaway tours sort of coming into existence. And the one which has now been established and is now making waves is LIV Golf, LIV Golf. Now, the background to that is they are funded by an entity called the Public Investment Fund. Now, this is a public body of money, pretty much solely bankrolled and financed by the royal family of Saudi Arabia. So this is an investment fund, depending on which source you read, upwards of $700 billion. So almost $750 billion is in this pot, this kitty, for investment. And it's through this group or its affiliation that Newcastle United, the Premier League football club, got bought. And it's through these kind of proxies, for want of a better term, that a lot of sporting events, either in Saudi or connected to Saudi Arabia, are now happening. So we had Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz 2, which was in Saudi Arabia, where obviously Joshua was able to get a unanimous points victory against Ruiz to claim his boxing belts back. There's a Formula 1 Grand Prix, which is going to be going through the streets of Jeddah soon. Obviously, as I say, the purchase of Newcastle United, and now the backing of LIV Golf. And Saudi Arabia has got a bad reputation. I think that's probably putting it as a mild understatement there, internationally. Um, Jamal Khashoggi, of course, we know what happened with the journalists a few years ago. There's accusations of human rights atrocities, just general corruption and shadiness, and other sort of accusations that are typically thrown at nations like Saudi Arabia. And what the accusations are is they're using this public money, this PIF, this public investment fund, as a means to finance sporting events, sporting spectacles, and it's called sports washing, where they're trying to use sport as a means of covering up, the accusations that are being thrown at them. LIV Golf being an example, that they're trying to use this tour, this glamour, this high value establishment as a means of veering, distraction, or sports washing, as I say. LIV Golf is interesting. It is very much a razzmatazz style, sort of Hollywood blockbuster way of promoting golf. Whereas golf would typically have 4 rounds of 18 holes, so an event is typically 72 holes over 4 days. LIV Golf is only 54 holes. So it's a third less as a means of trying to speed the tournament up. Normally golf, halfway through a tournament, after the first 36 holes, will have what's called the cut. So, players are trying to shoot as low a score as possible, and a cut relative to where the leader is will get rid of, a segment of the field. So players, certainly for the first half of a tournament, are battling to make the cut, get as close as possible to the leader. In LIV Golf, there is no cut. It's almost like a constant shootout, and at the end of the 54 holes, whoever has the lowest score wins. I think the largest prize was won by Dustin Johnson, if I remember correctly. And apart from having this shootout where, you're there from start to end of the tournaments, the prize fund is significantly larger. So you've got that attraction for the golfers that they can play fewer events, which are a third less holes, but earn significantly more money in terms of appearance fees, relative prize funds as they go up through their standings at the end of the event, and of course if they're victorious, a rather large check. And this is causing major ripples through the sport of golf, to the point where the European Tour and the PGA Tour have formed an alliance as a means of trying to safeguard on the commercial side and the media side, trying to offer some form of guard and defence against the threat that is LIV Golf. They're coming with buckets full of money, and it's massively attractive to golfers who have complained about the schedule and the workload for a while now. And if you are a sports person, man or woman, you've got a finite career based on your physical ability to maintain what you would call in football match fitness, or in combat sport fighting fit. You've got a shelf life of, say, your late teens to, in golf, maybe your early 40s. That is your window to maximise the ability and your consistency of your game. And so, of course, if you can earn significantly more money for potentially less travel, and having to play physically less tournaments or holes, that's extremely attractive. It's difficult to turn down. But there's obviously the history involved in golf. There's a certain prestige, there's a certain tradition, there's a structure, there's an establishment, an agreement internationally, as I said at the start, between all these different tours. And now we have rivalries and potential legal actions being taken by and against players who are signing up to participate in LIV Golf, to the point where their ranking points may be abolished, where they are now fighting for their right to continue to be able to play in majors. This could have serious ramifications, and it's a fine line, because players are looking out for themselves. They don't want to play to the point of causing themselves injury, which could affect their long-term ability to play the game, and obviously their earning potential. Could also affect their ability in later life in terms of mobility. You could potentially have things like arthritis or RSI, based on the amount of time that you spent bent over the ball and the action and the stress that go through your hip joints or your wrists. It's a difficult one because the players are looking after themselves. They don't want to be continuously participating or putting themselves in a physical or mental position which could affect them later in life. But at the same time, there's also the safeguarding of the actual game, the traditions, the values, and the audience, which is now, generations old. So it is a difficult one. This did happen before in the game of darts, where in the 90s the players were unhappy with the way that the revenue from the advertising and the sponsorship and the TV was being distributed to the players. And so there was a split between golf, where you had the BDO, and then you had a rival tournament called the PDC, which has now become the dominant series, to the point where if you are not competing or winning in the PDC, there's almost no value to being in the BDO. Its very existence is now been brought into question in what is a relatively short space of time. And it looks like the same might be happening here in golf. Various tours, like the PGA or the European Tour, either are commencing or are considering commencing legal action against players who are going to go and play on LIV Tour. Their tour membership will be ripped up. They may have some form of agreement or a contract in place which they might have legal action against. They might have their ranking points effectively torn up, and their ability to participate in future majors is sort of up in the air. Now, LIV Golf, as I say, is funded primarily by Saudi investment, Saudi money. They do have a CEO, ironically a former PGA player called Greg Norman from Australia. Very, very good player, multiple major winner, who has voiced dissatisfaction about the PGA Tour for a number of years. And he is now the flag bearer, the pole bearer for LIV Golf. Very, very divisive. And we've recently seen Rory Mcilroy, who, because there's been an exodus of player going out to LIV Golf, and obviously an upturn in his own play as well, which is good to see. He recently reclaimed the world #1 spot. Looks like he's getting a bit of consistency back in his game. He recently called out Greg Norman again, saying that he needs to exit left, as they say. He's been a big critic, very vocal against LIV Golf. He's taken a point of not chasing the money. He's made the point of staying and fighting and protecting the legacy of the game of golf. It's, as I say, it's a difficult one because you can see what happened with darts potentially happening again. And golf is a bigger entity than darts was. A lot of money at stake, a lot of geographical territories because of where they go and play, the impact on the majors, the amount of TV money and sponsorship that's involved. It is huge, the repercussions here, if this really did get nasty. And I'm worried. I'm worried that one of the games, one of the sports that I am passionate about and that I love a lot, is facing an uncertain future. It's not healthy if the major participants, the major draw, which is the players, are at loggerheads where, you can have half the field taken away playing in a rival series, which may not even be on TV. It dilutes the competition. It makes all competition weaker. It's not healthy if you've got players at each other's throats. It could have a knock-on effect for something like the Ryder Cup, which is an incredible spectacle. And it's really, really sad and really, really worrying. I don't have an answer. I don't have a solution. But I think, although it goes under the radar a lot, golf, I think this is something that needs to have attention drawn to it, because this could set a precedent. Now, in football, or soccer as the Americans call it, we had a major issue here in Europe within the last couple of years, where the biggest clubs, which are the Manchester Uniteds, the Barcelonas, Real Madrids, Liverpools and so on, wanted to break away from the European body, which is called UEFA, who run the Champions League, which is the premier European club competition. And they wanted to form their own competition where they could be more in control of TV revenue, they could be more in control of sponsorship, prize money, promotion, the distribution of the wealth, basically. And it was called the European Super League. And the moment that came out, the fan uproar, never seen anything like it. which was fantastic. The power of the fans, the protests, every fan deserves a pat on the back there. Very difficult in golf. It's not quite the same thing. But we're seeing something similar. We're seeing a sort of a super league or a breakaway sort of happening before our very eyes. And it could be really detrimental to the game, the very fabric of the game. And I just think it needs to be spoken about more. I think getting the various sides round the table to see if a compromise can be sought, where maybe LIV Golf can be some form of additional competition that might take the place of some of the lower ranking events, or some way that they can coexist without necessarily affecting one another. Because at the moment you've got some of the biggest players in the game not actively participating on some of the other tours, having their membership ripped up, an inability to protect ranking points, and the very ability to compete for the majors is now in doubt. That's not healthy, and that's not for the good of the game moving forward and for the next generation looking to pick up a club. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that to light, bring that to the attention of people. Maybe they've got their own views on that. Maybe they want to get involved and air them. But I just think it's really, really worrying times at the moment for the game of golf. Anyway, hope everyone's well. Keep checking the channel. Keep checking the podcasts. There's going to be more episodes, more content dropping your way very, very soon. Take care.